So, welcome back to another Queendom Stories. And this week I am joined by Anna. And
Hi.
Anna, I'm going to introduce you properly in a second, but just to say that Anna and I actually met in a coaching container together when we were being coached by Annika Sumafrey, who, if you haven't listened to my episode 1, head back over there and you'll hear Annika talking. And Anna's joining me today to share her story of transformation.
Yeah.
And also, I know you're going to generously talk a little bit about working with me as well towards the end.
Yeah.
So, welcome. So
Thank
wonderful to
you.
have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So, Anna, starting with all that way back
Yeah.
before you started this journey,
Yeah.
who was the Anna then?
Well, I've always felt like something in my life or me wasn't in the right place. I never felt like I belonged anywhere or that I was who I was supposed to be. I've been struggling and fighting against myself in probably most ways you can, to be honest. I've not
Yeah.
done drugs though, but yeah. So when I was I think I was like early 30s, I started to realize that I have this um, clairs or psychic abilities that had been there all the time, but all of a sudden I understood what it was, the dead people I saw, or knowing things about persons or what would happen. Like I have I think I've scared my parents quite a few times when we've been talking about persons. Then I was like, no, 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 he's dead. And they said, no, he's not dead. And then like 2 or 3 days later, you saw his death rune in the papers or whatever.
Yeah.
But then I started to kind of explore this psychic world that I discovered. And I started to work with tarot and found great ways to help myself in that way. And I also had a neighbor who moved in that worked with uh, Byron Katie's The Work that helped me a lot with my
Yeah.
anxiety and my self-doubting. But the real change was when you and I met with Annika, when I started to really, dig in the dirt, so to speak, and find out who I was, why I'm here, what my purpose is, because I've always felt like, you know, I was destroying everything instead of, being the good girl that you were supposed to be, because I was told I was supposed to be a good girl, wear dresses and be neat and, all the girly things. And I never liked that. I have never been a girly girl. I was for a few years when I was a child, but not after like 10 years or so.
Yeah.
So I started to work on there, and I've done a few courses with Annika, and the big thing for me was this summer when I did Queendom Codes with you. When you put your little advertisement out of that for a little, hey, here's Queendom Codes, and I was like, oh my fucking god, I need to do that. I was at that time I was not really financial, able to do it, but I my soul was screaming, you have to do this. Just write her and tell her like it is. You have to do this, and I was like, okay, I will do that. So I ended up doing Queendom Codes, and wow, yeah,
we're
wow,
gonna we are gonna come on back onto
yeah,
that, but I do
yeah,
just want to, you touched on a few things. So
yeah,
I know that you were talking obviously about not being the good girl, or seen as the good
yeah,
girl, and
yeah,
obviously in our work together and also the previous container
yeah,
with Annika, um I'm aware actually the impact on you is much more than
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So are you all right just to take us a little bit deeper into actually what your realizations of the impact of growing up with some of
Yeah,
those messages?
yeah, yeah. Well, I in 2019, I think it was, yeah. I I had a few rough years with my oldest son, and we've been on this constant battle with school and everything. So I was literally leaving my work and going to the psychiatric ward to ask them to help me because I could not handle my life. So they admitted me for a few nights to help me calm down, and I had a treatment with psychologist and trauma therapist, and I realized that my mom is a narcissist, and growing up with a narcissist and being the scapegoat is a living hell, to be honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, from that I've had scars that are not easy to deal with, but it's so worth it. But you have to be aware that it's a tough shit work, to be honest. You have to really, really go through the worst part of living and detach yourself from it. And it's very hard. I've literally lost half of my family.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I obviously I know that when we did that second week of the Queendom Codes and it was starting
Yeah.
to touch into the feminine energies,
Yeah.
I just remember getting that message from you saying, I just want to quit. I'm not going
Yeah.
to, but I just want to quit.
Yeah.
And we picked up and actually, did an extra session with you.
Yeah.
And the fact that what you've still said to me afterwards and has stood out for you was we did the meditation and the visualization and the chains.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. And
Yeah, I remember sitting there dragging them out, and I could feel how big the chains were, and the taste of them. They had been like laying in rotten whatever, and I could just feel it, it all, and I was sitting there and I was like gagging and I was crying because it was so icky and I was so scared. And for me, it was the message about I just so want to quit was that I didn't want to deal or even have to accept the feminine part of being me. I was so afraid of it because I thought it meant that I had to accept things that my mom said or did that they were all right. And yeah, it was hard, but I'm not a quitter. I can lay down on the ground and scream and kick or, hide in a bush or whatever, but quitting isn't something I do. I've never done it.
and I
I don't
think
know why, but yeah.
but I think that you've just said, you can lie down on the ground and scream and kick
Yeah.
and cry
Yeah.
and I just think sometimes as women, and especially as you've talked about, this expectation of being the nice girl
Yeah.
and wear those dresses and, behave
Yeah.
yourself and you behave a particular way, or the expectation is to behave a particular way.
Yeah.
And quite often we grow up with messages about, being seen and you've only
Mm.
heard a particular way.
Yeah.
Um, I know for me, it was always about how you present yourself. And
Yeah.
really silly example, but I remember when I very first got my nose pierced, going out with my mum every time was like, you're not wearing that out with me. And there was still this judgment on who I might
Yeah.
be because I've now
Yeah.
got a nose piercing, even though I'm the same person I was yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just made me think about the fact that actually we're allowed to kick and scream and
Yeah.
shout.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're allowed to have all those emotions. And
Yeah.
especially when we're trying to clear tough,
Yeah.
messy stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I've never heard from my mom that, oh, what you did good, or oh, I'm so pleased, or I'm so happy for you. Like when I came home, I was in, I think I was in like in 11th or 10th grade, and I came home and I think it was like 2 or 3 points from having, the full test result. And she was like, oh, I'm so glad. Did you do best in class? And I was like, fuck you. So I was like, can't you just be happy that I did this good? No. And I did an essay in psychology that my teacher, she said, "I'm stunned. I don't even know what to say. This is perfect. You've done a great job." So I got a big A. Like she was like, "It's not a big enough to, give you." And I came home and I told my parents, and my dad was like, "Oh, that's really good." And leaving the kitchen after we had dinner, I heard my mom say, "Oh, she wouldn't have had this grade if I hadn't read it through and corrected her, errors." And I was like, "Can't you ever be happy? Can't you
Mm.
ever be proud? Can't you ever give me some credit?" So for me, until like 2 or 3 years ago, having a compliment or having someone saying you did really good was like, I was scared. I was like, hell no, don't say that. I'm not worthy of this. I've had, this and this and this and this, you know. So I put myself so much down, because I wasn't worthy. I wasn't worthy of anything. I wasn't worthy to eat. I wasn't worthy to live in this nice house. I wasn't worthy to, you know, be who I was. I was just supposed to be whoever she wanted me to be. And it was so hard to realize that and work through that and see that she has got a brain damage, because that's what narcissism is. It's a undeveloped area of your brain, as I have understood it. And to free yourself from that and detach all of that from you, uh, it's been a very tough, scary, shitty nightmare.
You're you're undoing, I guess the basic way to put this is you're undoing your whole identity.
Yeah, it's like, a bud in early spring. Some like trees, they have this hard kind of shell or whatever you want to call petals.
Yeah.
And it was like someone forced me to break them off,
Yeah.
literally break them off. And I was there like this bud, not fully developed, not fully ready, just raw and naked, and had to find somewhere or some way out of it. And it was first it was with Annika, working with her, and then it was like the Queendom Codes, obviously, that helped me see that, this bud, yeah, it might have been ripped off the protective shields, or even put the protective shields on, but you are who you are, and whatever you are is you, and accept that and feel confident and comfortable being you. Like that is so scary. I cannot put it in other words. It's scary as hell.
And using your example of, that bird and having the outside ripped
Yeah.
off, I think, at that point it would be so easy to find something else,
Hmm.
as we've all done,
Yeah.
to protect yourself again, to find
Yeah.
something else to
Yeah.
cover yourself back up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually being there and
Yeah.
naked and exposed, literally,
Yeah. Yeah.
but also for the first time starting to look at yourself in a way that you've never looked at yourself before.
No.
And of course that's going to be scary, because there's all
Yeah.
these bits that you have never looked at.
No. No.
It,
It's
it
like
rem-
it's like I've never felt like this body is something that I should be, like, in the Bible, I think it is, that says that we should take care of our bodies because it's the temple that God lives in.
yeah.
I grew up in a Pentecostal church, and you know, but that word stuck to me, and it came clearer and clearer and clearer to me this past, say, 18 months. That, yeah, this is my vessel. This is the vessel that I, for some reason, chose to be in. I chose to be born and given up for adoption. I've chosen this life. So whatever it is I need to go through, I will go through it, because at the end here, someone else will have help by me, and also I will be free. I will be so much freer, and I know I will feel so much better once we're through. So that's why I wrote and said I'm so feeling like giving up,
Yeah.
but I'm promising you I'm not. But yeah. So
And
I've done this hardcore, really hardcore work with yourself for the past like 10 years, and then feeling like I can't take this shit dig anymore. I'm so done with it. When is it going to be over?
Oh yes, the the wonderful healing journey where you
Yeah,
work and work and you think you've got
yeah,
there, and
yeah,
then actually because you've got to a new point, then there's new layers and new shadows to look
yeah,
at,
yeah, yeah.
and the process starts again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when you're giving birth. I remember when I was in this course before you give birth, the midwife said, "You will feel at a point that, oh, I'm so done, I want to go home." But know that when you feel that, it's not long time before the baby is out. And I never thought of that for years. Like my son is 16 years, but it came to me this summer when I was working with you. Like when you feel like you just want to go home and leave it, it's soon over. So just put your mind on that. It's soon over. It's soon over.
And I
Yeah.
think it's also when the breakthrough comes. It's
Yeah,
that bit when it
exactly.
feels that most painful, where
Mm.
it feels the messiest. Quite often,
Yeah,
you know, that referred to as the dark night of the soul. It's
yeah,
actually that moment before that big breakthrough, before you
yeah,
finally see
yeah,
yourself in a new way, or
yeah,
before.
yeah. But the thing I want to add here is the self-sabotage you do to yourself
Yeah.
because you don't feel you're worthy. I mean, I've been sitting in this house alone for weeks when we haven't had the power shut off because I didn't pay the bills because for some reason I just forgot all about it when I was sick.
Hmm.
And the loneliness I felt and the utter feeling of being alone, it was so fearful. But it was at that point I realized that, okay, this is the shittiest shit I've ever been in. It's the shittiest place I can even imagine. But I am responsible to take myself out of it. How do I do it?
Yeah.
How do I get myself out of here? Because you're not sitting in a place because someone else put you there, because it's you. You put yourself there, and you can take yourself out of any shitty situation. Any, I promise you, any shitty situation. Just be open to the solution might be way out of your comfort zone or way out of what you thought would be, but you will get out of there.
Yeah. And I think you've just
Yeah,
said it. That's the hardest part for
yeah,
all of us. That
yeah,
bit where we have to recognize our own responsibility in,
yeah.
yes, there might be situations that were out of our control, certainly when we were children. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
we couldn't control the messages we were getting from society, from parents,
Mm,
any of our experiences.
no.
But there is a point where we have to take responsibility for ourselves and
Yeah,
make that choice, which
yeah,
is either I can keep living this story
yeah,
and I can keep being the victim of my beliefs and the victim of the bullies from when I was, for me, when I was 13, or the victim of my relationships, or I can take control, no longer be the victim, and make the changes so that I can love myself,
yeah,
feel worthy, because
yeah,
everybody's worthy just by being here,
yeah,
and make this a life I want to live and I choose. And I think
yeah.
that's the big word, isn't it? Is choice.
Yeah, and also be aware of that. Like me, I have children and I have a family that my choices impacts them.
Yes.
I mean, I've chosen to break the bad family habits or lines or whatever you want to call it because
Mhm.
I do not want to keep those. I don't want to keep passing on this sick behaviors or whatever it is to my children. I've worked very hard to be not like my mom, to fight her, to protect them, to protect me, and say, stop, this is not my life. Stop, this is not your choice or whatever it is. And the power you feel when you start doing that, it's awesome. It's so worth all of the fear and crying and panic you have before, but it's so worth it. Yeah.
And yeah, that, you know, I think if if we could collect the keywords from our conversation so far, you know, there's definitely responsibility and choice, and as
Yeah.
you said, power. That bit where you actually step into your power because you've taken
Yeah.
responsibility and you've made that choice. And
Yeah.
then this is all where you are, and you can be
Yeah.
powerful from that place.
Yeah, and dare to be that naked and dare to ask for help or, explain your situations, because I was so afraid of doing it. But when I did it, I had friends and some relatives that just came out and said, but you know what? You can't have it like this. I can lend you this money. Don't pay it back now. Do it later. Do it when you start working again. Or, you know what? I can come home to you and help you clean your house a bit. We clean it your way so you don't feel exhausted, because that is a hard part, I think, for many to dare to say that, hey, I'm here, I'm in this situation, help me. Because we're so ashamed of what we have, in our lives or what our lives has turned out to be. But I would almost certainly say that someone is out there and willing to help you.
Mm. Well, it's being open and vulnerable, and it's really interesting actually, because
Yeah.
this weekend, obviously, I've been working with Colette Baron Reed and doing Oracle Palooza, and we were
Yeah.
talking about receiving and what the blocks on
Mhm.
receiving are. And just for myself, what came up was I had a point in my life, my early 20s, after everything had gone wrong with my ex, and I'd had to move areas, and I actually had a lot of people around me supporting me, looking out for me, whether it was getting me out. One of them loaned me a car. Like, I had all this amazing support. And then over the years, I realized I'd put my barriers back up, and
Yeah.
I'd look around occasionally and I'd go, well, where's all my support? And my big aha this weekend, see, I'm still on my own journey. My big aha was, well, of course, my association with getting support was being so far down.
Mm.
Like, I was literally just coming out of the hole and being so vulnerable.
Yeah.
And there's been a pride, and it's like, well, I'm not that person anymore, so I don't need to be in that space. But it
Mm.
doesn't mean that I don't still want to choose to have help occasionally and have the support. Well, not even
Yeah.
occasionally, I want to choose the help and support. So
Yeah.
now I have a new piece of work, which is now balancing that vulnerability. I've got much better at asking for help, but realizing that I probably need to be more open myself.
Yeah. We all do.
Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
you're talking about all the layers. See, my layer has come up this weekend. So
Yeah.
but
But
yeah,
you're never done. You're
no,
never done. It's not like you go through a transformation and then you stay that way for the rest of whatever your life is. You evolve all the time, but the deepest shitty grit will somehow, be behind you. But there are always layers. There are always pieces you need to shed.
yeah,
And you grow as you learn new stuff and evolve. And that's probably the most beautiful part about being human, that you never know who you are because you change. Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
one of the things I have to say I loved with you on the Queendom Code was just getting those regular messages from you
Yeah.
and those regular comments saying, I've just done this. And actually, as we were talking about being vulnerable and accepting help,
Yeah.
um, your time of accepting help when somebody had offered,
Yeah.
or messaging me going, I think the one that has stood out for me, and I will admit made me cry, to see you doing all this amazing work, was messaging and saying, my partner's got me back as I was.
Yeah. I literally scared the shit out of him, I think. No, to be honest, I think I have, because he lived with someone for like 3 or 4 years that didn't want to be intimate. I didn't even sleep in the same room as him because I couldn't stand anyone touching me or being near me. And all of a sudden, I was like, him coming in through the door after work, like, come on, we're going to bed now. He was like, oh my God, can I eat? No, later.
What's happened to my partner? I'm not complaining, but what's
No,
happened?
no, no. He was just like, this came sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And, if we think that we worked together, well, 5 weeks and a couple of extra sessions with
yeah,
the blocks,
yeah,
and that's the shift. And
Yeah.
that's not the only shift. I know you commented about
No.
your son noticing as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
that you can add all these other changes, because I will not be able to remember them all, but actually the way that the way we talked about it, and if
Yeah.
anyone that works with me knows that this is about as crazy as I get, I remember the very first call that we had, you were
Yeah.
talking about the words "poor puss is going to leave me,"
Yeah. I
and
was referring to my cat. Yeah.
we know this. And but by the end, actually, the identity, that kind of archetype persona
Yeah.
that we were
Yeah.
talking about, was you turning into Cat from Red Dwarf, that very
Yeah.
flamboyant,
Yeah.
out there, I'm me, I'm
Yeah.
here. And just that shift
Yeah.
has been awesome,
Yeah.
to see and hear. And I remember you messaging one day about the clothing choice you'd made.
Yeah. 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 I think I messaged you one time when you had like hurt your ankle and you were like in bed and you were laughing so hard that you almost fell out of bed.
Yes, thanks for that.
Because, yeah, yeah. Because this is me. I'm a bit crazy and I like to joke about everything with myself. I don't laugh or joke about others, but with others. So yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think this is, I mean, I think this actually is really important to share, because
Yeah.
like you said, this work is deep, it's
Yeah.
messy, it's painful. I think, every podcast episode I talk about transformation, those words get caught in there somewhere,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it doesn't have to just be that way. The fact that we can laugh through it, we can
Yeah.
laugh together through it,
Yeah.
doesn't have to be in this space of pain and mess
No.
100% of the
No.
time.
No.
And actually, the outcome is that your partner gets the person back that they met, or that
Yeah.
you've chosen, I cannot remember your outfit choice to go into town, but your outfit choice when you went out,
Yeah.
and that all of that has come from having some fun in there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have been laughing so hard, like, my makeup has been ruined in seconds sometimes in Queendom Codes because we have been laughing, because you need to laugh at times to get it through. Like,
Yeah,
life is so, awkward and hard at times that you need to laugh at it, because if you don't, you take it too seriously and you will only end up being depressed. Like, I had my coworker talk with my boss the other day, and she laughs at me every time we talk, because I am kind of humorous, but I remember coming back to work after being home for almost 1 year, and we had a new boss. They changed bosses when I was home, and I met her for like the second time, and she said like, so how are you prepared now when you're coming back to work? And I said like, everybody speaks about you need to have a mental riff-raff, to spice up your life, but I don't need it because I am one myself. So I have one of these walkers instead, with steady, that keeps me on the ground, and I have my little basket where I can put things. And she was so cracking up, and I don't know where that came from, but that has certainly been a help for me to have that mental walker that I have. And
yeah,
you for me it's been, find whatever keeps you calm and grounded. Like, for me, I have a routine every morning when I call in my ancestors, my grandmothers, my sisters, and everyone, the female line from way back, and ask them to help me live this life. We learned that in Roots. You remember that
yeah,
invocation, to call them in and help me to see and to realize and to, help me through the day. And the days that I don't do that, not so easy always, but the days that I do that,
mm,
I feel like I have more open eyes, literally and like psychic also. And uh, Queendom Codes has made me realize that I am me.
mm,
I'm not anyone else's version. I am me, and if it pleases someone, I'm glad. If it doesn't, well, it's your loss. Yeah.
And that is the powerful place for us all to get to, you know. And
Yeah.
that was, as you know, that's was my story as well, about, you know, that
Yeah.
wanting to belong and that wanting to fit in and all that stuff I
Mm.
was carrying around. And actually, for us to do what we want to do, and for us to achieve those dreams and desires that we truly
Yeah.
want, we've got to get back to being us.
Yeah. I mean, there is someone out there that might need to hear this, that you do belong here. You are here for a very specific reason. And stop fighting yourself. Stop fighting against you yourself. Find someone who you feel safe with and work with them, because you will find yourself. I always saw myself as a, one of those big machines that just like tear things up and smashes things, like, uh, but instead I realized that no, I'm not. I'm just the one that points out the things that everyone deep down inside themselves, they know this. But I'm like pointing out it so they can't avoid it. They can't go through or pass it by. They need to accept it. And it's like the story about the Kaiser, he thinks he's got all these fancy clothes, but really he's walking through town naked, and everyone like, oh, look at that cape. Oh, look at his pants. And it's a little boy standing there saying, no, he's nude. And
Yeah.
everyone's like, no, 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 he's not nude. That feeling has been my feeling for all my life. And now I'm like, okay, you could see this. You didn't want to see it. Your problem, not mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really loved as well what you said about finding somebody, because that's the important bit, is finding
Yeah.
that person that fits you to be able to do the work.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to feel that you trust them, you know, to be able to be as
Yeah.
vulnerable and exposed
Yeah.
as you're going to get, and to
Yeah.
be able to move through it. It has got to be somebody you feel safe with.
Yeah. And whatever comes up in a session, you can't take it like when we worked, if you said something to me that was like painful to take in, I can't take it as you saying it to me and being mean to me. It's like life is giving you this option to see that here is something you need to deal with.
Yeah, here's,
Yeah.
I offer you this, and yes, you have the choice. You can either
Yeah. Yeah.
put the boundaries back up, put the walls back up and go no and defend, or
Yeah.
get curious. I
Yeah.
think that's, I know that that first week, you know, we
Yeah.
talk about coming in with a place of, well, it's the 7 pillars. So that self-compassion, self-forgiveness, getting curious,
Yeah.
and it's coming from that place,
Yeah.
and just going, well, I wonder.
Yeah.
So
Like I remember the first prompt we got was to write down what we thought this could be or what we expected it to be. And I went back and read it a few days ago, and I'm mind blown, because what I've written and what actually happened it has been fulfilled, but like eons more than I could ever think. I went into Queendom Codes hoping that I could accept that there is a feminine part of me, and yeah, it's there, but I didn't have to deal with it. It was more like, yeah, yeah, it's there. And instead, it was a curiosity that just like dragged me along the course to, hey, femininity, what can that be? Oh, yeah, I can wear a pink skirt that is glittery if I like to. Yeah, I can. Yeah, let's do it. Or I remember the session with the change. I
yeah,
was so scared, and I remember asking you and the others in the course, "Can you please just hold my hand because I'm so scared?" And you were like, "Just breathe, just calm down." I was like, "No, I'm scared as fuck. You have to hold my hand." Remember that? Because that
yeah.
that was how utterly scared I was, because it was so scary. But we came through it, and
No,
after that it was like the ground has changed. It was like, yeah, it's a new ground. I've shedded whatever, and I'm ready to go on.
and for me, that was your turning point.
Yeah,
Those chains for me,
yeah,
watching the before and after, that was your turning point.
mm,
But
yeah,
it's also about, like anything and like any coaching, it's also how much you put in. and seeing you, and like you said, seeing the rest of the group as well.
Yeah,
But seeing you put in so much, and even you're saying about your expectations from the beginning to the end, and owning this as well. I had expectations of what this program could do and the shifts it could make for somebody, but I have to say, being very honest, getting that message about your partner and the person you have gone back to being was over and above any expectations I had for
yeah,
the course as well. And actually, there were
yeah,
lots of messages and comments along the whole way through, which I think every single
yeah,
week I was watching all the hard work that was being undertaken in the group
yeah.
and just going, I couldn't have planned this.
No,
Here's of course, here's a course,
yeah,
here's a process. And I think as well, what you were talking about feminine and wearing pink skirts, but of course this wasn't just about the outer look or how you dress
mm,
or even just about the body. It really is encompassing that feminine energy, being able to be vulnerable and open and
yeah,
curious and all those softer qualities, and
yeah,
that by leaning into those in life, how could it
yeah,
be different? And
yeah.
yeah, I think you all did so much amazing hard work that even I couldn't have planned for the outcomes.
No. The thing about the Queendom Codes, I think, is like I can only speak for myself here, but I think
Absolutely.
the others also felt it. It's like all of a sudden you morphed into something stronger. Like when I accepted the feminine part of myself and that I can be feminine in my way and whatever I do is me, I felt I felt so much stronger. I wasn't naked. I wasn't tiny and raw. I felt like a kind of, those really, really huge, like ancestor goddesses or whatever you say, like
Yeah.
I felt that I had the entire female line behind me
Yeah.
that kind of morphed into me and like just took over my body in a good way because I'm no longer scared about being me or feel uncomfortable being me. I am me, and if it fits someone good, if it doesn't, well, I like it, and fuck off if you don't have anything nice to say.
Anna, that line almost seems like the best way of ending this.
Yeah.
I am me and fuck off if you don't have anything good to say. Is there anything that you haven't said, either about transformation in general or obviously about the Queendom Codes, because we've been talking on that as well, that you would like to share with anybody else?
I think that no matter if you feel drawn to the Queendom Codes or someone else,
Mhm.
just go ahead and trust that this is for you and trust the process and don't go into it with, I'm going to do it and see what it is. Be open and let it take whatever it needs to take to get you to next level because doing something half-hearted or something, yeah, it will be progress, but if you do it hardcore style, you will be so much better off. And yeah, it's scary, yeah, it's hard work, but you are worth that. You are worth that hard work. You are worth all those gains. No matter what you feel, you are worthy. Yeah.
Well, on this one, I'm gonna leave that last line to you. And I think we are going to finish with the words, you are worthy. And just thank you
Yeah.
so much for your participation and your work and being you and being Kat. And because Anna, as well as everyone else out there, you are worthy as well. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.